the issue of the international reaction to the poisoning of ex-spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter, which raises the question, has Russia become a rogue nation, a rogue superpower? Has Vladimir Putin revived the Cold War in his quest to restore the country to the kind of global dominance it enjoyed in the when it was the Soviet Union? Well, to help answer this, we're joined from London by former Kremlin advisor Alexander Nekrassov. But first, let's go to Washington and speak to James Lamond, manager of the Moscow Project at the Center for American Progress. And James, let me put it to you. Has Russia become, in a sense, a rogue nation, a rogue superpower?
I think what they're trying to do is to build out a conflict with the United States, with the West, in many ways to help raise them up to the stature that they had during the Soviet Union era, right? And where it was essentially the two global superpowers. And we've seen this time and time again over the past several years as Russia tries to help build this siege mentality among the Kremlin's domestic audience. And I think that in many ways helps feed the power and feed the narrative of the Kremlin.
Alexander, speak to that mentality a little bit. That's a sort of interesting take on Vladimir Putin today. Why continue in what seems to be a pursuit of interference or antagonism around the world versus in 2018 potentially taking a step closer to the West?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that Israel probably knows how it is to stand against the majority and be right. Israel found itself in a similar situation when it was all by itself, but it still continued to do what it thought to be right. So Russia at the moment is standing against the West, which supposedly is united, whereas the West is wrong in this particular case.
What is Russia right about?
Because what happened in Britain, well, it was a provocation in Britain. There was no proof. The campaign against Russia was launched at once. Nobody even gave time for the police and the special the security services to investigate. I'm a professional, spin doctor and journalist, and I can tell you that I saw their big mistake when they started this campaign too early, when nobody could have said that Russia was behind it simply because the investigation didn't even start in earnest. So this was a big mistake the British made.
James, what do you think? Are those 25 nations, including the United States, jumping the gun?
I don't think so. I think the intelligence communities within each individual nation has basically come to the same conclusion. I think Theresa May outlined the case pretty clearly in her remarks in front of Parliament, and I think what we're seeing now is a unified approach within the West to that. The provocation is more on the other side, as Russia was, with the poisoning of Mr. Skripal and his daughter.
Alex, former Russian scientists that took part in the development of that nerve agent have come out publicly and backed the UK on this issue. Why doesn't Russia respond by opening the files on its development of this nerve agent if it's so innocent?
No, Russia, first of all, asked to show some proof, which wasn't shown. I listened very carefully to Theresa May's statement in the comments, and especially the questions that followed from the MPs, and I can tell you they have nothing. They have nothing to show as evidence. And I can tell you another thing and give you a reminder. 15 years ago, the then Prime Minister Tony Blair also stood in the comments and made up allegations about chemical weapons. And 15 years later, we have another Prime Minister who is making up allegations unsubstantiated, with no proof at all, also quoting intelligence agencies again, saying, oh, they know. And again, nothing. So I'm sorry, but history is repeating itself, and this time as a farce and a tragedy at the same time.
James, you've just heard from Alex. Basically, the Kremlin added response to this, which is not giving an inch. So what kind of further response is going to be perhaps needed by the West to make some kind of impression on the Kremlin?
So there are a number of further steps that could be taken. So if you think about this as the first step in a series, I think what would be most impactful is hitting the Kremlin where it hurts, right? And so the next step would be financial sanctions targeting at those supporting and surrounding the Kremlin.
Alexander, how far will Vladimir Putin take his response? I imagine that he won't let it go without a show of force.
Well, obviously, this diplomatic procedure is the usual thing, tit for tat. They're sending out the same number. This is all symbolic measures. And what I find absolutely ridiculous is how the media in the West says, well, we are smashing the spy rings, the Russian networks abroad. Well, I must tell you that the intelligence services, the spies, they're no longer operating within embassies. That was in the Cold War. Now they're operating as businessmen, and so on. So I don't understand, this strange perception, oh, we've sent out 23 diplomats, as Theresa May says. We've damaged and crippled the intelligence network. This is rubbish.
So, Alexander, you acknowledge that there is a heavy presence of Russian intelligence forces in one form or another across Europe and likely across the United States. They're just not working in embassies.
No, I'm acknowledging that all sides are spying, that America has its spies all over the world, everywhere, especially in China and Russia, Britain as well, all the Western nations as well. So to claim that Russia is the only one, the only power that is spying or, electronic surveillance, cyber attacks, this is also insane, because the budget of the CIA, so that you know, is $44 billion a year. That is all of the Russian military have this budget. So you can imagine what the CIA does in its spare time. Of course, the spying goes on, but you can't just blame one nation.
Okay, I want to ask James to respond to that. Is this action using a nerve agent on UK soil? Is that business as usual, spying business as usual?
No,
I'm asking James.
I mean, there are certain.
Go ahead.
There are certainly. I'm sorry. There's certainly spying that's conducted around the world, but there's only one country that's going around poisoning people with nerve agents on park benches, and I think that what we need to look at is a unified, comprehensive response from the West to these actions, right? And I appreciate Alexander's comments acknowledging that there are people out there are many people working as businessmen or not officially registered as diplomats or spies within foreign countries, those are exactly the type of people that I think we need to look at and target in terms of financial sanctions and preventing their ability to operate within the U.S. and the West.
All right, James Lamond in Washington and Alexander Nekrassov in London.